Welcome back to our collections unboxing behind the scenes video series. I am your host, Emma Daly, Director of Collections and Exhibitions here at the Seward House Museum. In keeping with the theme for October, we have an artifact here that is a little bit creepier, and it is a book from our library, which looks very unassuming from the outside, but the inside, it offers incredible insight into a popular 19th century movement and also into the viewpoints of one particular member of the Seward family. And the book in question is on spiritualism. Spiritualism was a social and often religious movement that came out in the 1840s and enjoyed a massive following up until the 1920s. Three of the main beliefs of spiritualism were one, a person's awareness continued after death, two, those departed spirits could be contacted by the living, and three, spirits have a higher understanding than the living and could offer advice or even insights into God, creation, the afterlife, etc. Spiritualists believed that anyone could receive messages from beyond the grave, but formal communication was conducted through seances by mediums. Mediums would talk to the spirit world through different methods. They could channel the dead directly, or spirits could communicate through knocks, the moving of objects, or manifestations. In the late 1800s, talking boards were often used, inspiring the creation of the Ouija board in 1891, though that was actually sold as a toy. Spiritualists often recognize March 31st of 1848 as the start of their movement because that was the day that the Fox sisters made their first made contact with the dead. They were the first of many celebrity mediums holding public seances in which the spirits would communicate through knocking sounds. And of course, we now know that the Fox sisters themselves were creating those knocks by snapping their joints in their feet and their ankles. A lot of frauds would come out of the woodwork over the years. In fact, famous magician Harry Houdini took great pleasure in uncovering fake mediums who he believed were taking advantage of people who were mourning their loved ones. But despite all of this, there were legions of people who adamantly believed in the spiritualist movement. But one person who did not approve of the spiritualist movement was Frances Seward, wife of William Henry Seward. Now, how do we know this? Because she wrote in the margins of this book. The authors set up the book as they've attended a bunch of these seances, and these are their observations. And Frances is very critical of these observations and is writing responses to the authors in the book. So the authors of this book seem to be genuine believers. It was written in 1853, early into the spiritualist movement. And we can see here that William H. Seward has signed his name in the front cover of the book. But why do we think Frances wrote the notes within it? It's an educated guess based on handwriting comparison of known samples of her writing and also what we know about Frances as a deeply religious person. We can see several examples throughout the book where she's responding to something that the authors assert. Her notations start off with simple lines marked along paragraphs that Frances found to be interesting. But here's where she starts to get a little bit feisty. We turn here. You can see that she's starting to write actual notes here in the margins. In this section right here, the authors write, "Yes, there are spirits who know everything in relation to the circumstances which gave birth to Christ. They are far above my position. They occupy those glorious spheres where all that can be known of God is revealed to them." Frances underlines passages. She's done exclamation marks. She draws a pointing hand here and then writes her own little response. So she responds with, "Which I fear you will never reach. Such infidel notions would not be tolerated there." Just a couple of pages later, she's also responding to the authors. Right down here, she's drawn a little asterisk The authors are making a comparison to other religions, saying that by comparison, spiritualists have lost their fear of death, because they can speak to the dead. But Francis responds, writing below with, "Is it the spiritualist who says, 'O death, where is thy sting? I verily thought it was the Christian.'" So she's basically saying that Christians had already lost their fear of death through their faith and their belief in heaven. All this is to say that Francis is not a fan of the spiritualist movement. So, regardless of what Francis thought, if you're like me and you are just thoroughly interested in the spiritualist movement, then you can join us on Thursday, October 19th for a free lecture, part of our lunchtime lecture series titled The Scourge of Spiritualism, which is going to be offered next door at the Equal Rights Heritage Center, and it is free to the public. So I hope to see you there, or at least next time in our follow up collections unboxing videos.